is to share some things that I've, for lack of a better term, cobbled together over the last few years using Google Forms to collect information and then automate some processes. I'm going to share an example with everyone. I'm going to share several things, and ultimately I'll share a folder. But here is a link to a document that I'm going to be following. Oh, that's the wrong link. Sorry, grabbed the wrong way. Ignore that link. Here we go. So this is going to be the document that I'm going to work through today. What you will probably find helpful with it is that it has descriptions of everything I'm going to talk about and the examples of the kinds of things I'm going to be talking about today. Before I jump into sharing my screen and showing you this, I have a question for all of you. What do you want a form to try and do for you? What are the kinds of things you might be wanting to automate? All right, I think that means you're not sure. You want to see what you can actually do, and that's fair as well. So here's my share. This is the document that we're going to talk about. But to really show you how things are working. So email students with low grades, participation. So Michael, that actually might be a really good use of YAM, yet another mail merge, and we can touch base on that. But what I want to do is I made a couple simple forms. They actually look the same, but we're going to set them up to do different things. So the first thing I want to do is talk about how from information that someone submits in a Google form, you can automatically send an email to anyone that contains information that was submitted in that form. And if any of you have participated in accessibility challenges and when you registered for it, you got an email that said, thank you for registering, and it used your name and all of that. That's how we did it. And so the first thing you want to do is make a form to collect the information that the students or persons are going to submit. In this case, I'm just collecting names. I'm going to select session, did you complete? So confidentiality statements, those will work. There's some quizzes functionality that will definitely work. So if you've never done a Google form, under new in your drive, you can say Google Forms and it'll open up, and blank form, do blank quiz. When you give the form a title, if you also click over here on the file name area, it updates the file name to the title automatically for you. And then you can start adding questions. And you can use all kinds of formats. Most of what I'm going to talk about today are going to be short answer formats. And so I have collected person's first name, their last name, and then what session of training did they complete. I have set this to automatically collect email addresses from Oswego users. And to accomplish that, in the settings here of the form and the responses, I flip this switch to collect email addresses automatically. You can have a question in your form where people type in their email address. But if you want to be sure that you're getting whatever email address they used, you can just automatically collect it. You can also require them to be part of Oswego. So only at oswego.edu respondents can do the form. we've got our questions. We have our form, how we're going to get responses and get email addresses. And so here in the responses tab, I don't have anybody submitted, but I want to create a spreadsheet to collect all of the responses. That'll be my record. And it's in this Google Sheet where we're going to do the scripting. So I'm going to click here. I'm just going to create with the default name. And so now we have a Google Sheet. And we have 5 columns. Column A is when the form was submitted. B is the email address that's automatically collected. We have their first name they provided, their last name they provided, and then what information they put about a session. One of the tricky things about thinking of Google Forms and this scripting is that this timestamp column A is considered column 0. It's not column 1, it's column 0. So we have 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. All right. So we're all ready to get information. What we need to do, I'm going to come back over here to my scripting document, is that we need to write a script so that the Google Sheet knows what to do. And so in my Google Sheet, I'm going to go to extensions, apps, script. And it'll bring up a menu here where I've got function, my function, these 2 curly brackets start it and end it. They're really important. And I'm going to probably show you, I'm going to show you an example of how specific this code needs to be. And so I have the script from the example document already there. I'm just going to copy and paste it. And I'm going to replace everything. And so my function is on form submit, and it's F is the form. You could put anything you want in there. I've just, based on what I've cobbled together, used simple notation. We need to define the information and the variables that we're going to collect from the spreadsheet. I want to collect people's first name, and that's the value that is in column 2. That's what the square brackets 2 represents. I want to collect their email address. That's what's in column 1. I want to collect what session they completed. That's in 4. I want to include a little different email address involved, so I set that as a variable as well. And this is a different variable because it's in quotations, so it's exactly what's in quotations is going to be used. This information with the 2 slashes before is just a comment. The program doesn't look at it, doesn't think about it. I've included the comments in the document I've shared with you and in this script just to help understand what's going on and what part is doing what. Otherwise, it can get really sort of overwhelming and lost, and it becomes a little difficult to troubleshoot or know what you need to change. The coloration in the text is actually giving you some information. So variable, that's a command. The subject in black is the name of that variable. And so the subject of my email is going to be, thank you for completing the whatever session today. But notice that today is black. It's not red, dark red like this text is. And this is because when I type this elsewhere, these quotation marks around today, notice they're sort of curly, they're angled compared to the quotation marks that are here, which are straight. it really matters. And so if you type your text, this information elsewhere, you want to be absolutely sure that you get those straight quotes there. And notice now today is in red. If we didn't fix that, it would have given us an error. And in fact, I'm going to undo it so I can show you what the error will be. I've written my body of the email, and so I have a little bit of HTML in here to format the email, but I'm going to say hi, the person's first name, end that line, start a new line. You know, we're thrilled that you've taken the first steps towards making your digital content more accessible. And then any questions about the session, you can reach out to. And this is where I'm using a different email address. All right. And then I need to give it instructions to actually send that email. And so that's what Mail App Send Email does. The email is going to be whatever address we pulled from the spreadsheet. This if I fix it, is the reply to email address, the subject of the email, and then I'm using HTML to create the body. So if you want to do this yourself, all you really have to do is make sure your variables here are defined correctly and add to them as many as you need. Change the subject as you need to, and change the body and any email addresses. Everything else should work uniformly for you. And when I click save here, it comes up and tells me there was an error. It tells me it's in line 9. And it's these quotation marks here. And so I'm just going to copy and paste to remove those. Okay. And now when I save it, it saves just fine. So I have my script written, but I need to go in and tell it when to do this. And that's what the triggering part of it is. Okay. So I'm going to come back to my script. I'm going to click on the alarm clock. And I'm going to say add a trigger. So when the form is submitted, use the head information from the spreadsheet and do this when the form is submitted. So I'm going to run this function on form submit. Use the head information from the spreadsheet whenever the form is submitted. And when you're doing this initially and you really want to be sure things are working, I tell it to notify me immediately if there's a failure. So that as you're testing it, you can get notified that there was a problem. You can say hourly, daily, weekly. But in a lot of cases, I want to know if this has failed. So I'm going to save these settings. Now, when we do these settings for the trigger, we're telling it we want it to do an email and so forth. And so we need to give it permission to access certain things in our Google account. And so I'm going to use my Oswego account. And so it's going to be able to edit, create, delete spreadsheets, manage drives, send email as me. And I'm going to allow these things. And so now I have my trigger. I've got my code. And so I can just close that. And looking at my form, I'm going to show you what'll happen is I'm going to click preview. So it'll give me a preview form. Put in my information. Submit. If I look at my sheet, it has that I did this. And then I realize it'd be better to share my screen a little different way. Now, if I go over to my email, I have an email with that information that's been sent over. I'm actually grabbing the wrong subject line. I'll have to look at that. All right. But that's how that statement works. And so you can have it pull whatever information you put in the form and have it populate in an email to whomever. Okay. Do folks have questions about what I've just shown you? And I'll be clear that in this document down here at the end, specific examples, emailing. And so that script that I just used is here. Okay. So the other type of automation that I want to show you is creating a PDF. And so I have the same form, although I've mislabeled it. The important part of this is you have to have a Google document that allows you to generate the PDF. And so this is just going to be a congratulations that you've completed whatever session. And this right here, highlight it in a somewhat different color. These two keywords in effect are variables that are going to get replaced when the PDF is created. So based on what we program, it's going to take whatever for key name is and put it here, and whatever key session is and put it here. And then the script will make a copy of the document, put those in, make a PDF, and either just save the PDF or you can have it email the PDF. Oops, sorry, Anna. Judy?
I'm trying to stay unmuted. Real quick, do we have to know HTML, or is that just to change any changes in the script? I mean, I haven't done any HTML for a lot of years.
It's the amount of HTML that you need to know is minimal to non-existent. The HTML here really, by putting in the paragraph tags, is so that things appear on separate lines and it's sort of a formatted email. I think you could probably write it within Word and export it as HTML and then kind of massage that a little bit to work with it. That would be one thing. If you really are just wanting to send email to a lot of people, it's probably easier and better to use a Google Sheet and yet another mail merge, because then you just write an email draft in your Google webmail and YAM pulls from that email and sends an email to everybody in the list. I realize this is kind of a special case where we really want to take specific information and send an immediate email using that information. And so the HTML really is just helping us format it a little bit.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I'm going to go through the same steps here. I want to make sure my responses are collecting email addresses, and I'm going to have Oswego addresses only. I'm going to make my sheet, so all my information is going to be recorded here. And I want every person that completes the form to get this congratulations PDF that fills in their name and fills in their session. And I'm going to get rid of the highlighting because otherwise that'll carry through. But I've created this document, and the part from this document that we really need is this really long name. So docs, document D. So this big long address name before the edit is what we need to have a copy of. So we want to copy that part of the URL. Just like before, I'm going to go into scripts. And I have the script copied over from the document. So I just copy and paste it in. And we want to confirm that this document template address, this name, is the same. I'm trying to remember the whole thing, forget it, but I know it ends at XOO. If I look in the completion document, it ends XOO. Okay, this is the right document. I've given it a name, it's our completion certificate. And so now my function on form submit, it's called E instead of F. I'm going to take their name from column 2. I'm going to take the session from column 4, their email from column 1. And this is the part that I've cobbled together from multiple places, and how it works, exactly why it works. I'll be honest, I'm not sure of all the details, but what this will do is open that document as a template, give it a new name that includes the name of the person you're creating it for, makes that copy of it. Now what it's going to do is replace the text anywhere that it sees key name with name, and anywhere it says key session with session. It's going to save and close the document, convert it to a PDF, and then the lower part of this should look kind of familiar because it's going to then create an email by setting a subject and a body. It's going to send the email, and it's just going to include the PDF file. And then it's going to throw the document away in the trash. And so when I save this, I need to go and make a trigger for this. And it's the same trigger that we had before. And again, we have to give it permission to do things. And our list of permissions will probably be a little bit longer because we're using not only just spreadsheets, but documents. When you are doing these scripts, it's really important as well that you're logged into whatever account needs to be doing all of this. And I found it best if you do multiple accounts to be sure you're logged out of everything except that one account. It avoids problems that can crop up. So we've got our script. Let's go and do a preview form. I put in my name, what session, submit. That information appeared here in the spreadsheet. And then in my email, I have the certificate that I've completed that with my name filled in, the session, whatever information I need. So you could make as complicated or as detailed template as you wanted to have all that information in one place and generate it into the PDF. And it really is all a function of working within the Google script and laying out what your variables are and then where those variables need to go in the document template. And so I fully recognize and realize that this might be really strange to a lot of you and really new to a lot of you. It was a few years ago to me, trying to piece it together to help do some things within the honors office. But I hope that the document that I've shared with you, especially where I talk about doing the different steps. We put in the key and whatever you want to call it into your template document. And then I've broken down as near as I can understand what each of those steps are. Rebecca, you do this mostly administratively. It's also helped us with the accessibility challenge and automating a few things in that as we've done that over the last couple of years. But it's largely for me an administrative component. But you know, from a teaching standpoint, if you want to collect information from students and have it all assembled in a common way, it would certainly work for that as well. I've never done anything with scripting with the quiz feature of Google Forms. So I'm not sure how that actually works or some of the classroom assignments. But I really just wanted to share how we do this and how I've been doing it, how I understand it, and really sort of the programming that works for simple things. You create a Google Doc based on the collected in the form. You mean take my form and turn it into a Google Doc?
Thinking like of a teaching situation where it could be useful to me, where students are submitting URLs to live projects and wanting to assemble it into a nice, neat document that's easy to read, that's not a spreadsheet, that's formatted. So I guess like maybe even the same way that you were just demonstrating with the PDFs, and just not do the PDF piece of it.
You can. Here's the Google Doc. I threw it in the trash. You just take the trash step away. Yeah, I know it's in the trash. Leave me alone. You just use it in, you just take the conversion to PDF and the trash step away. So let's do this. Let's edit the script that I just wrote for this process. And I don't want to convert it. So I'm going to put the 2 slashes there to comment it. And I'm not going to throw it away. I'm going to put the 2 slashes there. And so I'll save this. I'll go submit it again. Give it a little different so that we know. And so I've got the second record. And now when I go back to the folder that I'm working from, this whole Google Scripts folder for this session, there's my completion certificate. So you could have it set up so that you had your Google form, your automated, your Google Sheet collecting responses. And then, yeah, you would just have a whole set of Google Docs that set everything up in the format that you wanted.
I assume
so
you can probably append to a document as well, just as a script that you didn't cover. Like continue to add to the same document. Have you done that?
I have not done that.
I'm sure you can based on what you've already shown, but
yeah, I'm sure you can as well. But I'll be totally honest. I have pulled these together. Largely, I pulled this together with the making a PDF document first and emailing it from examples I found on the web, and then sort of began to understand what some of the coding was. And just so everybody's aware, occasionally Google will do a little bit of updating and the script will break. And it's really just a matter of going back in and looking at it, saving it, making sure the trigger is set correctly, and resaving everything, and then it's fine. So I don't want to say that this is universal and will always work forever. Occasionally there's a hiccup. So just to be clear, in the document that I've sent, that I've shared with all of you, I copied, in the case of the PDF, this whole part of the document and pasted it over into that script to make it work. And if I've never done PHP, so I'm not sure, but probably and I just, so that everybody knows, if you start kind of going through and wanting to do this and run into a hiccup, let me know. I'm happy to try and help troubleshoot. I won't promise that I can resolve it, but the two things that I've found to be very careful of is the formatting of the code, and that you are doing everything from the account that things happen from. As I mentioned, I did this primarily for honors. And so I have to be sure when I'm doing things like this, I'm doing that logged into only the honors at oswego.edu account. I can't also be logged into my personal Oswego or my personal Gmail, or it creates conflicts. And so you really want to be only one login, and it's the one you want everything to happen from. So that's what I've been able to accomplish. There's lots of other ways that you might choose to use this in terms of the sending emails or creating a PDF or just a Google Doc. I wish you much success in deploying it and taking advantage of it with the goal of saving you a little bit of time for something that happens a lot and is just more efficient to do automatically. And specifically for Pat, this is what I'm talking about. This is what I was talking about to help you folks out in accessibility resources, is that we can set things up to do some of those things automated for you that way.
Excellent.